have been recovered. In a moment now, what we're going to do is show you the videotape of this morning's launch, and then slow motion the videotape. As preparation for that, you might want to point out that this was the configuration of the space shuttle as it took off this morning. This is the orbiter, the Space Shuttle Challenger. The liquid fuel is in the large tank. The solid rocket boosters off to the side. The shuttle, of course, has 3 engines of its own. Solid rocket boosters in the shuttle's own 3 engines all have to be at full throttle for the liftoff. Then the commander throttles back to about 60-65% of full throttle, and then has to throttle forward again. And it was that second throttle forward, just after he had done that, that the explosion occurred. Here was the launch this morning from Cape Canaveral, Florida.
2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading down range. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the plane, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly. Engines at 65%. 3 engines running normally. 3 good fuel cells. 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles. Engines throttling up. 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up.
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
Half an hour after the explosion, a serpentine trail of white smoke. It was twisted by the upper wind, and that smoke remained in the cold, clear sky, marking the path of the shuttle's wreckage. The explosion occurred about the time the shuttle was to enter a period of maximum aerodynamic pressure. Wind and other atmospheric conditions placed the maximum force on the outside of the space vehicle. And now what happened in slow motion detail. You'll want to look first for what may have been a couple little vapor indications of flame. You can begin to see them shortly. This is about 60 seconds into the launch, if you will, and then the larger explosion. You see what appears to be vapor flames at the base in the left-hand side of the screen. Now the main fuel tank begins to ignite and explode. As we wait for President Reagan to address the American people, you will note in the upper right-hand quarter of your screen, what appears to be an almost entire, there's the upper quarter of the screen, piece of what is believed to be the right solid rocket fuel booster. Now, Leo Krupp was saying a few minutes ago that those boosters are supposed to parachute into the sea and are possibly recoverable. You can see how that large a piece of debris, if it can be found, might indeed be very valuable in the investigation. Now, as we await, that's what happened this morning, both in real-time videotape and the slow-motion videotape. And as we await President Reagan's talk to the American people, you may want to ponder a poem called High Flight by John Gillespie McGee, Jr., a 19-year-old American volunteer with the Royal Canadian Air Force who was killed in training December 11th, 1941. And he wrote a poem called High Flight. And it reads, "Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Somewhere I've climbed, and joined in the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue. I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind I trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. In the wake of the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger at Cape Canaveral, Florida, this morning, shortly before noon Eastern Time, we take you now to the White House in Washington for a talk by the President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core of the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss. 19 years ago, almost to the day, we lost 3 astronauts in a terrible accident on the ground. But we've never lost an astronaut in flight. We've never had a tragedy like this. And perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes: Michael Smith, Dick Scobie, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe. We mourn their loss as a nation together. The families of the 7, we cannot bear, as you do, the full impact of this tragedy. But we feel the loss, and we're thinking about you so very much. Your loved ones were daring and brave, and they had that special grace, that special spirit that says, give me a challenge, and I'll meet it with joy. They had a hunger to explore the universe and discover its truths. They wished to serve, and they did. They served all of us. We've grown used to wonders in this century. It's hard to dazzle us. But for 25 years, the United States space program has been doing just that. We've grown used to the idea of space, and perhaps we forget that we've only just begun. We're still pioneers. They, the members of the Challenger crew, were pioneers. And I want to say something to the school children of America who are watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow. I've always had great faith in and respect for our space program, and what happened today does nothing to diminish it. We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public. That's the way freedom is, and we wouldn't change it for a minute. We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue. I want to add that I wish I could talk to every man and woman who works for NASA or who worked on this mission and tell them your dedication and professionalism have moved and impressed us for decades, and we know of your anguish. We share it. There's a coincidence today. On this day, 390 years ago, the great explorer Sir Francis Drake died aboard ship off the coast of Panama. In his lifetime, the great frontiers were the oceans, and the historian later said he lived by the sea, died on it, and was buried in it. Well, today, we can say of the Challenger crew, their dedication was, like Drake's, complete. The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye, and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. Thank you.